everyone, and welcome to this year's Q&A. Every year around this time of year, I like to sit down and do a very extensive Q&A where nothing is off the table, and honestly, it's a video I look forward to doing every single year. So without further ado, let's get into this year's Q&A. And don't forget to subscribe, as I would love to have all of you join the family. I've got all my questions here, so let's start with question number 1. How do you find the time to read? Do you read 10 pages a day, or simply because you want to? I think when it comes to reading, if there's a will, there's a way, right? You don't really think about when you're gonna watch Netflix at the end of the day, you just do, right? And so I think when it comes to reading, it's very much like that. I have loved reading ever since I was a child. It's not something that I sort of came onto as an adult, or, you know, I discovered audiobooks or something like that. Like I've always been a reader. I've always just truly enjoyed a good book. I will say though, because I was always in a very academic setting, you know, in high school I did IB and then I went to U of T. I've just always been surrounded by very like academic minded people. And so I think with that, I, as a young woman, came to really believe that like literary fiction was the end all be all. And I think when I first discovered like books that were fantasy and romance and even a little bit of historical fiction, my world of reading just completely exploded. And I quickly learned that reading nonfiction and only lit fic does not make you superior, okay? I think there's so much to learn from reading great fiction and fantasy and romance, and at the end of the day, no one ever just watches documentaries, okay? We watch shows because they're fun, and I think reading should be exactly like that. So if you're someone who thinks that like the only books you can read are like self-help or really hard to read literary fiction, step away from that mentality and try something that's fun. It's something that makes you excited to pick it up every single night. And so when it comes to, you know, how I squeeze it in, or do I only read 10 pages, if it's a really exciting book, you're not going to stop thinking about it, and all you're going to want to do is pick up that book and read it. And so yeah, there you go. The next question is, will you and Jack move into a bigger place? The answer to this is most likely yes, but eventually. I think this question gets a little bit complicated because when it comes to, I think, the two of us and us as individuals, I think we're both really, really happy with where we're at right now. I myself feel so fulfilled with this apartment where we are in the city. I just, honestly, it is everything I've ever wanted. But being a content creator is very demanding in terms of sort of how quickly it can overtake your personal life. It requires a lot of storage. So there is lighting equipment, there's PR, there's the office side of things. You need space to store paperwork and contracts and, you know, all of those things. And on top of that, naturally, you have a lot of clothing, a lot of shoes and bags and belts and whatnot. So it becomes very demanding in terms of how much space it requires. So for that reason, I think it would give me a little bit of peace of mind to have extra space for sort of my work things. I think that's probably why we would move into a bigger unit. Otherwise, I think this unit is more than enough for the two of us. And again, I absolutely adore it here. But again, because we're very happy with where we are, it's not like we're in a rush to move. So we're sort of just like passively looking, and if something comes up that is like, oh my god, this is incredible and totally makes sense, then yes, we'll probably get a bigger unit. But right now, I think we're both so happy where we are in life. And I mean, I think it feels really, really cool to wake up every day and just say like, I love our home, I love our life, and that is where we are right now, and it's really special. I'm going to answer this one next because I feel like it plays into the question that we just asked, which is, are you planning on buying a house one day, or are you a condo girl? You know what? I'm gonna say never because life is crazy. But as of right now and where I am in my life, I much prefer a condo. So if we were to buy, which I don't actually feel ready for that responsibility yet. I think a lot of people, and especially a lot of adults, will say like, buy a house, it's the best investment. But it's not just an investment. Also, there are better ways to invest, but it also is a huge responsibility. You know, you have to be ready to fix things yourself, to take on the mental load of, hey, if something breaks down, who do I have to call, or do I have to do it myself? I have to spend the money. And I don't want that responsibility just yet. To be quite honest, I love my maintenance guy, okay? He's my best friend. But on top of that, I think when it comes to house versus condo, right now in this point of my life, I love apartments. I love the security that they come with. I love knowing that there is full-time security downstairs at the front desk. We have concierge, we have our managers here, and we have parcel lockers. Like, there's so many levels of security that even a, like, what's it called, like a security system in a house, I think would never offer. And so for me, I'm someone who's a little bit like about safety. I love the safety and sort of sense of security that a condo and an apartment building offers that for me right now, a house would not offer. And so yes, in this moment in time, I am 1 bajillion% a condo, apartment, city girl. I mean, I've said this before, never say never. Maybe I'll move off into the, you know, Scottish Highlands with Jack one day. But as of right now, I love the city and I love condos. It's just what brings me joy. So there you go. I really like this question. Did your mom's style of dressing influence you at all growing up? Oh, okay. The answer to this is yes and no. So my mom's exact fashion style, I would say, didn't influence me because we are so very different. So my mom and I, first and foremost, we're besties, okay? But we are so different. Like our personalities, our tastes, I think are, even though like I think they're both incredible tastes, they're very different. So I always think of it like if you were to look at our homes, I mean, some of you have caught glimpses of my parents' home, but their interior design is so different. Like my mom is like, I would say very sleek, modern, a little bit minimalistic. Think like the modern side of restoration hardware. Whereas well, you guys know my apartment, filled with antiques, color, dark cabinetry. It's just like very, very different. And I think when it comes to our style, it's very similar. You know, she is super edgy, like she rocks like those like leather sort of biker boots. She's just so chic, but so edgy. And I am so far from edgy. And I'm just like a bit more like delicate and feminine. And even though like we both love our suits, I think our styles are very different. So I don't think my mom's like specific style has influenced me, but I think the thing that my mom did influence me was, you know, just how she approached beauty and taking care of herself. You know, I grew up watching her taking care of her skin, her hair, her makeup, her outfits, her clothing, how she took care of every single piece of clothing and shoes and accessories that she owns. And I think honestly, like that is where I get that side of me, where I wake up every morning and I take care of myself. I dress up, I put my best foot forward, because that is exactly what she taught me and how she raised me to be. And so I think that 100% influenced me. And I think the other thing is that she was always the type of mom that was like, you don't have to be me, but be 100% true to yourself. And again, I think that is what helps me just be me and stay true to myself, because that is like what she repeated over and over and over again as I was growing up, and still to this day. Although her edgy style hasn't fully influenced me quite yet, Mom, you might, it's never too late. I think how she approaches beauty and fashion and just life overall 100% influenced how I approach my own life. Here we have another book question, which I actually really love. The question is, what are some of your favorite historical fiction books? Okay, I'm gonna be a major snob about this, and if you love historical fiction, please keep reading it, because reading is all about loving what you love. But I have a really hard time reading historical fiction. I am a history major, okay? I've studied a lot of history. I've spent many years studying history. So I have a really hard time when I'm reading historical fiction books, because I can see the inconsistencies, the inaccuracies, the liberties that authors have taken, and I just takes me out of the story. I can't focus on the story. I just get very annoyed that things are not even like a little bit wrong, but like totally wrong. And so because of that, I actually don't read a whole lot of historical fiction. I have DNF'd many historical fiction books, which makes me sad. You'd think I'd love it, right, being a history major. But there are a few that come to mind that I think are fabulous, and the first one is Outlander. Diana Gabaldon, the research that she put into her books, I have so much respect for. When it comes to the language, the time period, everything to me is just so incredibly well done. It was, even though that's not like, I would say 100% historical fiction, that's I think teetering into a little bit of fantasy, the way that she approaches the history side of her books are so incredibly well done. So Outlander was one that was extremely well done and I absolutely adored. Another book that I think is just extremely well done, now it's not technically historical fiction, it's speculative fiction, but that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Now, even though the book technically takes place in the future, all the events and everything that has happened in that book were very carefully researched by Margaret Atwood, and so everything that's in that book has actually happened in history. There is technically nothing fictional about the things that happened in that book, which I think makes it a really interesting read. If you've read it, maybe read it again with that perspective, knowing that all of the things that happen have already happened, and try to see if you can pinpoint where in history those things have happened. It really makes you, I think, approach the book from a totally different viewpoint. And if you haven't read it, you have to read it. It's incredible. Watch the show if you want, but the book is way better. And another one, actually Jack reminded me of this one. It was The Book Thief. Again, phenomenal book. Really, really beautiful read. It's a long one, but it's very, very good. Next question is, are you a proponent of Canadian products? If so, why? I'm assuming this question is trying to ask, do I support Canadian brands and stuff like that? And my answer is absolutely. I try to support as many Canadian brands as I possibly can. Smythe comes to mind, Missouri comes to mind, and I think I really, really do try to not only work with Canadian brands, but wear them as much as I can. But when it comes to my personal style, and I think Canada's, I guess Ontario style, Canada's very casual. There's been many, many times when, I've tried to search for Canadian brands. What turns up is a lot of athleisure, fitness wear, casual wear. And so I personally have just really, really struggled to find brands that align with my style, my aesthetic, and yeah, so obviously I try to support Canadian brands. Of course, why wouldn't I? Canada is incredible, but I think just because of our style here, it sometimes makes it a little bit harder to do so. But yeah, I always try to. But also, I would never want to get stuck to one country, because I think every country has such amazing things to offer. And so I would actually rather pride myself in saying that my wardrobe comes from all around the world. I think that's my approach when it comes to where brands come from. I think it's really cool to support every single country and not just one. So you go, that's my approach to Canadian brands. Okay, this is my 5th time filming this question because I have so much to say about it, and I honestly could spend hours talking about this topic. But this question is, I have an only child and I'm afraid of them being lonely. What's your experience like as an only child? I honestly think that this is something that's not talked about nearly enough. And oftentimes when I do see sort of the only child experience, especially in media, I think it's so inaccurately represented, to be completely honest. And so I feel like I have to start off by saying this. I think understanding the history of having multiple children and the so-called atomic family, which if you don't know what that is, it just means the classic husband and wife and a daughter and a son and a dog. That's your kind of traditional atomic family, right? In some ways, you could say that this is a societal creation. This is not necessarily the end-all be-all thing to have. And I think knowing that this was created by humans, I think perhaps can make you think a little bit different about if having an only child really is superior to having multiple kids. Or did society simply tell you that this, the atomic family, is better than an only child, right? And I think when you look at the science behind having 1 or 2 kids, I think not only are the experiences very similar, but I think there are a lot more positives that people don't think about that are included in only child. But again, I feel like only children are talked about in such a negative light that it completely skews the perception of people. So when it comes to loneliness, no, I don't think I ever felt lonely. In fact, maybe the opposite. I think I had so much of my parents' attention and love and energy given to me that it was always there for me to have if I needed it. So I never ever felt lonely. And I think another great quality trait to only children is that because we didn't have siblings to rely on, I think we are very good at, being alone and being creative alone and knowing how to sort of hold ourselves, which I think a lot of adults still don't know how to do that, right? I think there is a skill in knowing how to be alone and to enjoy your solitude. And I think I'm so grateful to have learned that, from being an only child. Obviously, there is no wrong choice here. There is no right choice here. But coming from me, I think, and the older I get, I do see more and more and more positives in having one child over multiple. I think by looking at my family, I just think the reason why I have such a beautiful and strong relationship with my parents is because they were always able to put their best foot forward. I think life is hard. Having kids is hard. Having multiple kids is even harder. And so I think because my parents were not like spread out so thinly, they were always able to, you know, at the end of the day, just have a smile on their face. They were happy, fulfilled, and content. And even if they didn't feel that way, that is how I perceived them. And I think, you know, coming home to happy, fun parents that were there to nurture their relationship with you, I think makes you just want to have a relationship with your parents. You know, so I get so many comments sometimes being like, oh my God, you're hanging out with your parents again? And I'm like, yes, because I love my parents. Like, and again, I'm so grateful for this, but I genuinely love hanging out with them. They are my friends just as much as they are my parents, and I'm so lucky for that. But I do genuinely think that that is because I'm an only child, and I think that they had the time to not only parent me, but they had the time to cultivate a relationship with me, not only as a child, but also now as an adult. You know, I don't feel like their time is split between me and other kids. No, like I have the time to spend time with them and continue building my relationship now as an adult, which is honestly the coolest thing ever. Now, when it comes to the cons of being an only child, and I think this is one that I've like come to as an adult, is that a lot of the memories you shared with your parents, I mean, it's gonna make me emotional. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna have anyone else to sort of bounce those memories off of, and like, this is just how much I love my parents. But you know, all the memories, all the amazing memories that we had sitting around a table, it was only ever the three of us, right? And Roxy, rest in peace. But I think when siblings, for example, lose their parents, I think they sort of do come together, not always, but for the most part, they do come together to reminisce, to be nostalgic. And I think the hardest part about being an only child is that you have all these memories, but the only people that you ever shared them with were your mom and dad. So, and again, like, this is like, you know, you have all these amazing memories, but they're the only ones you can share it with. So it's kind of like a bittersweet moment, but I think that is worth everything. I wouldn't trade all the amazing moments I had with my mom and dad just to have another person to share them with. But it is something that I have to prepare myself for in the future, because, you know, I'm not gonna have anyone else to sort of understand my loss, if that makes sense, right? But anyways, I hope that this can give someone a new perspective on being an only child, and perhaps can make your decision not feel as overwhelming as I'm sure it feels right now. But yeah, again, I don't think you can make a wrong choice. I think love is infinite, and no matter how many kids, I think you're gonna love each and every single one just as much as having just one. I hope that wasn't too long-winded. I tried to keep it very brief, but let's move on to the next question. Now on to a fashion question. Where do you get your fashion inspiration from? I love this question because I am a little bit weird when it comes to who I am. I think there's a lot of people that, you know, like take a long time to find who they are and what they like in life. And I, for whatever reason, and please tell me if you guys are like this or if anyone out there is also like me, but I, from a very, very, very young age, have sort of always known who I am and the things that I like. You know, from a very, very young, like my grandmother and I went to an opera when I was like 5 years old, and still to this day, it was one of the most incredible nights of my life. You know, I used to go to ballets when I was younger. My 19th birthday request was to go to vineyards because I just wanted to go wine tasting, and I enjoyed that sort of very slow and beautiful way of living. And so when it comes to my style, you know, I was wearing loafers, trousers, and shirts when I was in high school. Not always, but you know, it was like when I was able to start choosing my clothing, that is what I chose to wear. Art. I was dragging my parents to the adult side of museums when I was like 8 or 9 because I wanted to go see the art and history of these museums. I have the reputation now of when I take my parents, when anyone goes to the museum with me, everybody is warned that I'm slow, okay? Because I read, I look, I literally go to the museum to learn, or to a gallery to look at paintings and sit there and take them in. So if you ever do get a chance to come to a gallery with me, just know I take my time, okay? So again, this is not something new. My taste in antiques, not new. My favorite thing when we first moved to Canada, it doesn't exist anymore, but there was this like mall. It was called Southworks in Cambridge, and they had this place called Antiques. Before I could even properly speak English, I used to call it Anti-Q's because the QUE messed me up. And so again, imagine an 8-year-old being like, oh, Mom, Dad, can we please go see Anti-Q's again? This was at the age of 7 and 8, because I just loved antiques. Like I was fascinated by them. And so I think when it comes to my fashion sense, like yes, I obviously get inspired by like newness, like new cuts and new colors and fabrics and stuff like that. But I think my style has always remained very consistent. I always loved trousers and shirts. I wear a ton of loafers. Still wear a ton of loafers. And so I think for me, like my style has always had a glimpse of that sort of like historical silhouettes. Think like Christian Dior from the 40s, the blazer and the skirts. There's this sense of like timelessness, but I'm also the type of woman that is very strong-headed. I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about being intellectual. And I think that's where you start to see these sort of like strong tailoring cuts. Like I always think of like Chanel, you know, she really challenged this idea of why do women have to wear skirts? Why can't we wear suits? And I think when you start to look at all of these things that I love and that I feel like represent my beliefs in life, you really start to see my wardrobe come together and make sense. And so again, I think for me, like I get a lot of inspo from all of those things that I love and looking back at history. And at the end of the day, and I always say this, I'm gonna be a broken record, if you put it on your body and you have this like bridal moment of, I feel really good, like this is the one, then buy it. Then that's for you. Because even if someone tells you, even if everybody in the room tells you that it's hideous and they hate it, but you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I feel like $1 million, then that's the piece for you. And I think when you're able to tune everybody out and do it for yourself, I think that's the sweet spot, okay? That's the money spot, when that becomes you. That is about you and no one else. And so yeah, I think when it comes to like my inspiration, I will sometimes say like me, my younger self, because sometimes I do go back to pictures of when I was younger and I'm like, I like that. I had fabulous burgundy loafers. You know my burgundy loafers that I bought recently? You know what inspiration was that? Me in 6th grade. No, not 6th. 9th grade. I was 15 and I had bought G.H. Bass patent burgundy loafers. And I looked back at this picture and I was like, those loafers look so good. Like they just look so elegant and timeless. So I bought burgundy loafers. So I think for me, my biggest inspiration is just looking into who I am as an individual and sort of having the confidence to wear that. Is that too cheesy? I'm being a cheese ball today. I'm sorry. Moving on. This is a really good question, and honestly I don't think it's one that I've talked about very extensively at all. But the question is, do you ever struggle with anxiety or low days? And I guess that's 2 questions, but yes. So I do deal with anxiety, and it goes through waves where I have really bad, it often hits me at night, where I get sort of like these anxiety attacks, and a lot of them get spurred on. And my anxiety attacks are really weird, where they come from a place of like feeling unsafe, and I just feel like intruders are gonna break in, and I just start spiraling, and it just becomes this huge thing. But you know, as I've gotten older, I've ensured that I have my tools to manage them, breathing, and all this stuff. But yeah, I absolutely do deal with anxiety. I also just am like a very nervous person also, just like that's just who I am. But I think, you know, it's so important to have people to reach out to, have sources, have friends, have professionals that you can always reach out to when you're in need. And I think talking about it is totally normal. I think it's 2025, okay? We all have issues, and I think it's totally normal to talk about them and, you know, be able to know how to safely and healthily deal with them. And so when it comes to low days, again, absolutely, I am human. I am not a super person, okay? So yeah, I absolutely have low days. I specifically have extremely severe PMS, to the point where I like lose all motivation. I am some days just the only thing I can get myself to do is lay in bed. I have extreme highs and extreme lows in my mood. I get very argumentative. I cry a lot. I have these like laughing and crying attacks because I'm crying, but then I'm like, why am I crying? And so I'm kind of laughing at myself. My hormones really do, I think, impact me in a very severe way. So yeah, I absolutely have low days. I am so human, and I think again, having people that are patient with you and can help you help yourself, give yourself what you need, right? Some days I need to go to a movie. The one night I remember I was just all up in my head with work, and my mom was like, do you want to paint together? And we painted together, right? Or Jack's like, do you want to go see a movie? And we went to go see a movie. And I think, again, like having loved ones that can help you through those tough times is so important. Maybe it's not a family member, maybe it's a friend, whatever it may be. So yeah, I absolutely have low days and deal with anxiety, but I think I have a pretty good support system that helps me get through those tough days. Next question is a fun one. Next question is, were you a hard worker in high school like you are now, or did you party? I have a really funny personality. So in high school, yes, I was an absolute nerd. I was in IB. I worked extremely hard. I was super studious. I was also a competitive figure skater. I did ballet. I also did volleyball at some point. I had a lot on my plate. I was also volunteering. I also had jobs during the summer. I had my plate filled to the brim all throughout high school and university. Same thing, extremely academic. I, at that point, developed a different love for academia that I never had in high school. So yes, I've always been, I would like to say, a very hard worker. I've always been very studious, very academic. I love it. But yeah, I got some partying in, okay, which is really funny. But in IB is a little bit different. So we didn't have our exams in June. I think we had them in like April. So May and June in our high school by grade 12 was like, we kind of like were just in school to be in school, because technically we had already finished all of our, what's it called? The word is blanking on me. What's the word? Like your material. Yeah, our materials. So we had finished all of our sort of like academic material. We wrote our exams. We were technically done school, but we still had to be in school till June. So we had lots of parties at the end of high school. We would play beer pong, we would listen to music. Because we were in a small town, it was very common to like hang out at people's houses. So we would be in people's basements, and it was just so much fun. And then when I went to university, I partied a little bit less, but I loved clubbing. Oh my God, I was all for dancing. I mean, obviously, like I just love dancing, but I love a good club, okay? I loved it. So yes, I got my partying in, but I would say I wasn't the type of like person that was like all partying and no school. Like, no, it was like school came first, and then, you know, you could enjoy yourself. But yeah, that's just my personality. I did get some partying in, for sure. I also went to some frat houses, which is like, but I think frats are very different here in Canada than they are in the US. So yes, I was a little bit of both, but I would say maybe more of a nerd and a harder worker than a partier. The next question is, where does your confidence come from? I think as an adult now, I think it's something that I work towards every single day. I don't think it's something that you can just like forget about. I think you have to work on your confidence every single day and the relationship that you have with yourself. But I think parents underestimate the role and the power that they have in raising confident kids. I think that is so incredibly important. And so for me, it was always acknowledging all the great positive attributes about me. You know, I never had my mom like pick at me about, you know, things, or, oh, you should do this better. Oh, you like, you know, do this and that in your body and your hair, like never. And so I think that having someone model these healthy relationships eventually allows you yourself to have sort of that healthy, what's it called, like relationship with yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, like I think confidence is in many ways a relationship with yourself. Obviously, I think my parents always not only praised me, but they were also just allowing me to make mistakes and own up to them and, you know, be whoever I was. And I think the one thing that my parents taught me that I think honestly is just stuck to me is be you, because at the end of the day, someone's not gonna like you. And, you know, I have so many phrases like, not everybody's gonna like you, or, you know, there's always gonna be someone better than you, and there's always gonna be someone worse than you. And I think kind of growing up with these thoughts makes you just feel like, well, if that's true, then I'm just gonna be me, because what difference does it make, right? Like, why change for someone else because someone's not gonna like that? So I think growing up with this mentality of be you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, I think allowed me to just be confident and at this point in time, walk into rooms and just be who I am, regardless of whether people like it or not. And I think there's a downside to that. You know, I think there's a lot of people that, unfortunately, and especially with women, there is a lot of sort of group mentality, whereas there's this sensation and desire to mold how you react, how you speak, your opinions, your feelings towards something to a specific group. And so again, because I think that expectation exists with women, it can make it a little bit hard to be sort of that person that, you know, why are we squealing? I don't want to squeal. That's not my personality. I'm not a squealer. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not, this is not the conversation we're having. I'm not bashing. But it's about not changing who you are as a person for other people, right? If I don't like green tea, I'm not going to say I like green tea just because everybody in the group is saying that they like green tea. It's just having this confidence in, this is what I like, this is who I am, even if it's the unpopular thing to say, even if it's you're the only one that thinks that, that's okay. That sort of type of confidence was ingrained in me by my parents, because they just taught me to just be who I am, be true to myself. But now, as an adult, it's because children are one thing, but adults are a whole other ballgame. I think now as an adult, I think having the courage to continue doing that is the work that us adults need to put in being confident in ourselves. And so, because I think being confident is just having the courage to be you. And I think adults really don't like individuality, in my opinion. I think we like the idea of individuality, but it makes us uncomfortable. So as an adult, the work that needs to go into confidence is having the courage to be you, to walk into a room and say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And that's confidence. Okay? It takes a lot of confidence and a lot of courage and bravery to do that. But again, it takes years, I think, to work towards this. And yeah, so that is where my confidence comes from. My parents, my mentality, my mindset. And yeah, I think that's about it. This next question is a really cool one, because I think I'm at a really cool point in my life, which I'll get into. But the question is, what are your career aspirations? Do you want to have your own business? So I feel like a lot of people don't know this, but being a content creator or an influencer is very much being an entrepreneur. So yes, I do have my own business, technically. And a lot of content creators and influencers do run their own businesses, right? So that is my career. As much as I am pursuing my degree, it's most likely not going to get used, but that's okay. I am okay with that. So I do want to continue pursuing content creation, and I think continue building this amazing, amazing community that we have built all together, because it's not just me, it's all of you as well. Now, something really interesting is that I have never been a content creator. I have been doing this for 5 years now. So cool. But I have never been able to do this job without having school take away my time and energy away from my job. And so I feel like I've just never been able to give you my 100% ever, because I've always had something, you know, to do. I had a deadline, I had an assignment, I had class, I had to drop everything and go to class. I had to, you know, do last minute assignments. I had all of these things that stopped me from doing things the way that I wanted to do them. And so when it comes to my career, my next goal is to finally be able to do this with 100% of my energy and my motivation, because I've never been able to do that. You know, I've been trying to cram 5 days of work into 3 or 2, which is a lot to put on someone, I think, to try to put all the mental load, all the energy, all the motivation, all the creativity into 3 days. Whereas I could, quite frankly, have 5 or 6, right? And so I think when it comes to my career goal, I think my next step is to enter this next phase where I can just do this full-time for the first time ever. And I mean full-time as in like the only thing I'm doing. And I'm just very excited. Honestly, my next career goal is to just understand how I, Samantha Guerrero, can be a content creator wholeheartedly and entirely with no other responsibility. I'm really excited. So that's my career goal. In terms of running a business, I'm assuming that was coming from a place of like, do I ever want a brand or something? Again, never say never. I just think that like, just because you know about fashion doesn't mean you can run a business, right? Or if you know about something doesn't mean you're good at running a business. And I think there's a lot of work and money and time and knowledge that you need to run a business in that capacity. And right now that is just not of interest to me. But again, never say never. So yeah, anyways, that is my career goal for the moment. Obviously continue growing our lovely little family here. Sorry for the sirens. Next question. Last question. When you get married, do you think you'll ever change your last name? Never say never, but no. Probably not. Potentially hyphenate like my legal name and papers. But I am Samantha Guerrero, and I will always be Samantha Guerrero. And I don't think a marriage should take away my identity of who I am. And again, I don't think there's a wrong or right here. I think you have to do what feels right for you. But you know, I just would hate for a classmate in 20 years to be like, oh, I wonder how Samantha Guerrero is doing. They go to search me up and I'm erased. Erased from history, erased from all of social media because I have taken on someone else's name who is not connected to my family history whatsoever. And so also, not to mention the historical patriarchal sort of implications of why we're taking a man's last name. So yeah, I don't think I would probably change my last name. I just don't think it's necessary. I totally understand the argument of like sharing a last name with your kids, which is again why I would maybe pursue hyphenation, but Samantha Guerrero will always be on this planet, okay? And I think that's how I feel about it. No man's taking my name away. Wow, that might have been one of the most extensive Q&As I've ever done. And I think one of the ones I've enjoyed the most. That was so much fun. But anyways, thank you so much for all of you that left questions. And if I couldn't get to your question, I'm so sorry. I always try to get to as many questions as I possibly can. But clearly I'm a chatterbox with a lot of opinions. So anyways, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. I will see you all on Sunday for our Sunday vlog. Bye. And if you stuck it out to the end of this video, you guys are the real MVPs.